Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel, Life After Loss. My name is Lindsay and today I'm super excited to have my good friend as a guest, Jack.
Hello.
I'm super excited to have you here.
I'm super excited to be here.
Absolutely. I always get thrilled when I get people to accept the offer of being a guest on my videos just because I know this is not, talking about loss and the grief experience is not easy to talk about, especially in front of camera. And I've told you guys this before. For some reason, when we get in front of cameras, it's like we get stage fright. We're like, oh my gosh, what am I saying? But I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today because I feel that the more we have these conversations, the more not comfortable, but the more we open up that door.
Completely.
Right?
Yeah.
The door to understanding that while we may not have solutions for what we're going through, we also can have a safe platform to be able to discuss these things, right, Jack?
Yeah, that's really, really important, I think.
So today, what we're going to be talking about is how loss impacts our perception about life. And this is something that we have touched upon in previous videos, but I think that it's truly important when you guys are able to hear other sides of people actually kind of relating this to their own personal experiences. But before we go into the topic, Jack, guess what?
What?
Are you subscribed to my YouTube channel?
Of course I am.
Of course. So if you're not, Jack's already subscribed. So if you're not, make sure to click that subscribe button, turn on those alert notifications so you know when I'm posting, because you know when I'm posting, right?
I do know when you're posting.
Alrighty then. And also feel free to check out my website, lifeafterloss.co, for more information on grief and the grief experience. And make sure to also follow me on Instagram and Twitter. So Jack, one of the reasons I'm so excited for you to be on this video is because I truly, from the day that I met you, I found you to be such an inspiring person. And I am really truly saying that because I mean, and not just because everyone's watching. But I find you inspiring, your story inspiring, because even though you've had several experiences that were meant to throw you on the ground and keep you there, you have been able to continue fighting. And that's literally what we were just talking about before actually doing this video, is how much I relate to you on that aspect of no matter if we're going down, we're not going down without a fight.
Yeah.
Right? And that's so hard because I think that the easiest thing is to go down.
And to kind of, yeah, I guess to not to give up, because I mean, yeah, it would be an easy thing to do, but then you realize kind of, I've unfortunately had a few too many people in my life kind of disappear. I don't mean that in kind of any particular way, but kind of I've had a few too many people. I've lost a few too many people in my life. Lost them due to various different kind of reasons. And the one thing that always would be easy to stop, to kind of to give up and wonder, why do we live and stuff, but then you realize that for each person that departs this world, there's just even more to live. There's even more to live for. There's just so much worth kind of continuing to do. And on a personal level, like from talking to friends who've had their own experiences of loss, you learn to begin to live with the loss. It's never easy.
And let me stop you right there, because I think that it's so powerful, the fact that you acknowledge the fact that it's not that you get over the loss, is that you learn to live with the loss. And that's something that a lot of people, it takes them time to understand. It took me a long time to understand because you always look to get back to the norm before the loss happens. And it's like that in itself, I feel like sets us up for failure or for unrealistic expectations. Right?
Completely, yeah. Because I mean, from my experience, from a friend's dad passing, from various different relatives passing, and like a bit of a horrible summer last year, you know that things aren't ever going to be the same as they are before. Realizing that took me a while. I won't lie, like it isn't easy realizing that, and like how did I come to realize that? Well, I guess the pandemic as well probably helped things in that regard. Things aren't going to be normal for quite a while, but also knowing that this change is happening, and there's nothing we can do about it.
Exactly. And that, I think, as human beings, is the most difficult thing to acknowledge when we don't have control. Yeah. When no matter what we do, what we say, that it's not going to change the outcome. And that is so similar to what we experience with loss, as far as losing a loved one, where no matter what you said, what you did, what you didn't do, like the loss was still going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. And that's very difficult to come to grips with. How do you feel, Jack, that loss, in essence, because it is something tragic. When you lose someone you love, it's tragic, it hurts, it's painful, and you go through your grief experience. But how do you think that that impacts your perception on life? Because how is it possible for tragedy to impact your perception of life?
Completely, and it has a massive impact on my perception of life. I've always lived life to the full. Fortunately, that kind of post 5 losses in the past year has not changed, but it makes you more determined to continue doing that and to continue using this gift that we have, and to go out there and to do what you can to, I guess, to make a difference to others, but also to continue kind of doing what you did before, even though it might have a different meaning. And that different meaning probably, for me, there's a lot of stuff that I can't put up with anymore.
Yeah.
When people come to me complaining about mundane things, about like a delayed metro, about little things like kind of okay, pre these things, like they were annoyances.
Right.
They are, I guess they can be big things in an ordinarily kind of like good or perfect day, whatever that might mean, but they're not important.
Mm-hmm.
They're really not important. What is important, I think you realize, I've noticed myself paying more attention to my surroundings, going through the loss of amazing people in my life. I've kind of gone out of my apartment some days, out of my house at home, and being amazed by like the trees.
Right. Or just the fact that the sun is out.
Yeah.
Right? Because those are the things that we tend to take for granted.
Completely.
When we feel like we're just going and going and going. Because in life, I think a lot of us are just kind of in that very autopilot way of living, where that's not really living as much as it is just checking off check boxes in your to-do list, or simply doing things because you feel like you have to, versus...
Well, with that as well, for sure. I remember being at home last summer after a particularly like horrible couple of weeks, and a friend asked me, kind of like, why aren't you getting the bus into town to meet me? Like, why are you walking? It's raining. And I went, well, the rain, the touch of the rain. And like, it sounds like ridiculous, and you have this renewed appreciation of a little bit of drizzle won't hurt me.
Right.
It'll get me wet, yeah,
right.
But isn't that what towels are for?
Yeah.
Or like, if I am drenched, the shop will be open in town,
right.
and I can pick up a new t-shirt for $1, like.
And you're sweet, but you're not made out of sugar, right? So you're not going to melt.
I'm not going to melt. Yeah. You're too kind. Yeah, and like just little things like that. And walking through quoting a famous song here, but like, when you're walking through a storm, and kind of not being afraid to let that. Can't stop thinking about those lyrics now, but
is it like learning to dance in the rain?
Yeah, I guess like learning to dance in the rain, and knowing that also when you bring that discussion up with a friend, when you're like, oh no, I'm walking, it's raining, and they're like, oh no, I'll come with you, and that usually, if it doesn't happen all the time, if it's a torrential storm, I'm not going to walk home, but sometimes you do want to, but then you're walking back with your friend, you end up having these incredible discussions with them,
right?
And they're things that they've probably might not have experienced, but might have also experienced in different ways,
right?
And that leads to incredibly productive conversations,
right? Meaningful ones, right?
Meaningful ones.
That wouldn't have otherwise happened had we just continued, again, on autopilot and just kind of doing rather than being. And I think one of the things that I hear kind of the loudest coming from your message, Jack, is the fact that you've kind of changed your life from a perspective of learning to be more than you do.
Yeah. Yeah, learning to be, and also kind of, I guess, to do too, but like in as far as the way that, I'm not kind of plodding along.
Right.
Action do speak louder than words,
right?
And in that regard, it's like kind of being more determined to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But definitely in terms of going and having kind of often conversations that might be deeper than you would have had with people, but then you realise that they're not actually deep conversations; they're just
superficial,
yeah. Kind of, and not having
substance.
Yeah, has then made the conversations that you do have way more kind of engaging.
Right.
No matter what the social situation is, it's not like I'm talking about kind of philosophical things all of the time, or kind of bringing the topic back to grief or death all of the time, but there are certain things that I've just not got the time for.
Yeah, exactly. Or the energy.
Yeah. And when I go to the beach, sometimes you do just want to have like a light-hearted chat, but it's not small talk. It's the light-hearted chat about the kind of the passion, about the music, or it's being contented in that silence too.
Right, exactly.
Being kind of around people and around environments where, you know, I can just be comfortable in that silence, because that silence like doesn't mean that you're not content. And there's that a friend out here kind of probably be nodding when he watches this, but he'd be like, you've got your contented faith. Yeah. And that needs no word.
Exactly, because also what I do want to kind of point out is that this right here, what we're talking about, doesn't just come overnight, right? We've both experienced loss. You've experienced many losses just this past year. And just the fact that you're here sitting next to me talking about it is just like a feat in itself, because this, I know, has to be difficult for you to think about, for you to reflect on, and for you to talk about. So everything takes time. And while I come on here to share my experiences, share your experience, and everyone else that comes on here, it shouldn't be used as, oh my goodness, I don't look at life like that just yet, there must be something wrong. No, because we all took time, and we all had to
You all have your bad days, and you do have those horrific lows as well. And, you know, particularly when you feel helpless at those kind of around you, you know, that you're experiencing it with. Right. We all have horrendous lows, but it's, again, for me, about kind of getting up when I'm down, as difficult as that may be, and sometimes that's just not possible. Like, and that's completely okay too.
Exactly. And that in itself is powerful, just because we think that, oh, you're always having to push yourself. Like, no, sometimes you just need to let yourself be. And as I was saying, like, I love the fact that we're having this conversation to kind of shed light on how loss does impact our perception on life. But that's not to say that this should be the perspective. Like, many people, loss impacts them very differently, as far as perhaps they're less trusting of people, or want to do less just because fear kind of takes over. And again, your experience is whatever it is, and there's nothing wrong or right about it. It's just the way, again, you internalize the world, the way you respond to it, and things do take time. This has taken, I mean, for me to have that perspective, Jack, like, it's taken me, I want to say, like, at least a solid, like, 8 years before I was actually able to be like, okay, like, I can either continue existing or I can start to live, because so many people don't have that chance today. So many people didn't make it to today, but I did, right? And it's not to say that everything has a reason, right? Because I know that sometimes that becomes annoying, like, oh, everything happens for a reason. Like, what's the reason for me losing my loved one? Where it's like, no, but how can we find purpose? Because,
but also, like, everybody has a reason to live, and, you know, losses can't be helped. Right. A lot of the time, like, it's about being able to kind of to go out there and to realize, you know, hey, like, I'm on this planet. Let's kind of work with what we've got. Right. And you know,
it doesn't take away the pain.
Doesn't take away the pain, and nor will it probably ever. But it's about learning to work with that, and to kind of, I think, for me, living like a child again almost, and you know, and that's not because of like what I've experienced, but it's kind of like, you know, you see the fragility of life in the death of others.
Exactly.
And what they want you to do, you know, they wouldn't want you to kind of wallow in their loss, which, I mean, they would. They always want you to remember them, but wouldn't they want you to remember them kind of on a mountain? Right. Or on a beach somewhere, and kind of, or on your day-to-day walk when you're just looking up at the trees on your morning commute, being appreciative of them, but also of, like, of the wind blowing on your face. Like, what I've taken a lot of comfort in. It's not been easy, and you do have those moments where you're like, oh, I really don't want to go, but then, you know, they're going to happen, and you are going to wander into work or into school or whatever and be crying, and you know what, that's still a feeling.
So what do you think are just a couple of things that you feel has kind of helped you shift into this perspective? Because as I mentioned, it's not easy to have these reflections or realizations of like, okay, like I have to live my life. How can I live fully and authentically to myself? Because right now I'm perceiving my life as a gift, being that is not the case for a lot of people that are no longer here. So what do you think are some of the things that helped you kind of shape this new perception?
I guess it's kind of like knowing that, you know, tomorrow's not guaranteed. And that's hard. But also at the same time, the sun will always rise again. Like the sun will always kind of keep coming up. And,
Right.
you know, after a terrible winter, kind of the trees always, this sounds like incredibly philosophical, but I think again, I get a lot of my comfort in nature too, and the trees always grow new leaves, and kind of like that in itself is inspiration to kind of
Right,
to
because
keep pushing.
they literally experience loss on a constant basis,
Yeah.
and yet they still stand tall.
Yeah, and they still stand proud, and they, you know, they're not gonna, the leaves might blow off in a hard storm, but that's not to say that they don't grow back.
Right. Right. So I think what I'm hearing from you, Jack, is that just kind of allowing yourself to be and to be patient.
And to ride that wave and to kind of to accept that things won't be okay
Right.
for a long time, and that time period is undefined.
Right.
And kind of knowing that, you know, someday it probably will be fine.
Right. And it's also, I think, knowing, because you kind of hinted at this previously, is knowing who to surround yourself with.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because if you surround yourself with people that perhaps you're not necessarily connecting with, or you feel like you have to exert too much energy, that's when you kind of feel like the friction, right? So it's knowing who your support system is.
Completely. And being able to kind of, often they will identify themselves. And I think that's, I mean, something I've been incredibly grateful for. Without them, kind of both friends that I've known for 5 months and also for as long as I've been around. Yeah, they've always been there, and kind of they will always be with you. I guess the hardest thing is to ask for help.
Right.
But when they're aware of something, they're never going to leave you.
Right.
And they might give you time, but they would also kind of for sure want you to kind of to reach out to them, and a good friend will know what you're feeling too, and they will know whether you're needing, you know, an energize, like a big group where you can kind of let your hair down in that environment, or when you're feeling vulnerable. Right. They know that, you know, it might be the time for a bit of one-on-one,
setting, right? And that I do discuss in previous videos on how we can support each other, because it's not easy. It's not easy. There's never the right time or the right thing to say. It's kind of just everyone has different needs, and as such, sometimes just asking, how can I support you? Do you need me to sit next to you? Do you like, what do you want to do? And kind of just acknowledging that right now you're struggling.
And it's also made me check in with other friends a lot more frequently as well. I mean, I'd have always done that, always have done, but when I'm kind of knowing what I've been through, and knowing kind of what friends have, I guess, like other people that in my life that have experienced loss, kind of, it gives you that greater awareness and the greater empathy, so that, you know, you do know to check in with them more frequently.
Because it's almost like you see people now.
Yeah.
Whereas before, it's like, oh, hi, whatever, like, I'll just keep living. It's like, I see you now. Like, I know I'm struggling, so I see you.
And I hear you in the silence too. And I hear that kind of, it's better to contact someone when you've not heard from them, for them to be busy. Exactly. Living their life, and for them not to have kind of to have that situation, right, to have a message back being like, you know, hey, like everything's grand, like I'm just busy with work, rather than it being yeah, but then for every time that happens, or for, you know, that might happen 9 times out of 10, but for the one time that a friend's actually kind of like, thank you for reaching out.
Right, because you never know, like, when you'll be a lifeline for people. Yeah, so I definitely agree with that. Yeah, right. For sure. But Jack, I really do thank you for coming on.
It's been a pleasure.
I really do appreciate it, because like I said, it's not easy to come in front of a camera and share your experience, share your insights, share your reflections, but I think it's something that's necessary, because the more we can talk about these things, the more we can connect, the more we can give space to our pain, to our experiences, and to just being human beings.
And to help others as well,
Right.
like, and you don't know what other people are going through either, and the loss that you might be experiencing might be a shared loss.
Yeah, exactly, because whether we acknowledge it or not, death is gonna knock on all of our doors one way or another, right? And it's gonna have an impact in our life experience. For some of us, it may mean that it's gonna be like a bucket of ice cold water and it's gonna help you wake up. For others, it may take a different direction. Whatever your experience is, it's your grief experience, and you should honor that however it comes up for you. So I want to hear about, how has death shaped or changed your perception about life, because I feel like this is something that, again, we want to talk about. We want to talk about what are other people experiencing, what are some of the changes that you're experiencing, because we tend to resist change because it can be something scary, and therefore we have, I feel like, this pull and push kind of relationship with it. But let me know in the comments below, how has loss or death impacted your perception about life? So I thank you, Jack, once again. Thank you so much. I thank you guys for tuning in and for being an avid supporter of my journey. As I mentioned, if you guys have not checked out my website, please do so. It's lifeafterloss.co, and make sure that you are following me on Instagram and Twitter, and as well subscribe. Come on, just do it, click it. All right, guys, until the next.
Bye-bye. Thank you.